Placemaking as a concept has been around for almost 30 years, but has emerged with compelling force and influence, especially since about 2005. This lecture seeks to bring all the strands and elements of placemaking theory and practice together. I will suggest that placemaking is increasingly the platform on which successful community economic betterment and historic preservation happen. The notion of placemaking was born in the early 60s when Jane Jacobs famously stood up to Robert Moses and the planning establishment and highway engineers and essentially won by challenging prevailing notions about what makes economic expansion happen. Her approach, Placemaking's approach, is fundamentally bottom-up, community-based, and respectful of existing resources. Both Jane Jacobs and Robert Moses are legacies who have been debated and discussed in conferences and books and an upcoming movie ever since the 20th century, and probably will be for many years to come. The different approaches to urban development, what creates economic development, it's the rabbit out of the hat that every politician wishes they understood. It's not a miracle, but there are different ways to go about things, and the whole placemaking philosophy has really come to the fore, and I think is beginning to articulate an approach that really works. William White, shown here with his video camera, was one of the pioneers in placemaking, a colleague and mentor to Jane Jacobs. His analysis of the social life of small urban places and his role in founding with Fred Kent the Project for Public Spaces consulting firm have had an epic effect and influence on the placemaking movement. Norman Mintz, who was one of the Main Street movement's earliest pioneers, was involved in the famous Market Street restoration program in Corning, New York in the 1970s. He's been involved with projects for public spaces a number of years, has written books and has advised communities on urban commercial neighborhoods and revitalization for many years. Another placemaking pioneer, Ronald Lee Fleming, has been involved with the Townscape Institute, which he founded, and has advised communities on public amenities and downtown spaces, and is a special expert, has written several books on the role of public art as a placemaking device. New urbanism is an urban design movement that arose in the United States in the 1980s and has gradually informed many aspects of real estate development, urban planning, and land use strategies. It encompasses principles such as traditional neighborhood design, transit-oriented development, regionalism, and smart growth. The organizing body for New Urbanism is the Congress of New Urbanism, founded in 1993. They talk about how neighborhoods should be diverse in use and population, communities should be designed for pedestrian transit as well as the car, and urban places should be framed by architecture and landscape design that celebrates local history, climate, ecology, and building practice. This is all similar and aligned with the whole placemaking notion. More than any figure of our times, Wendell Berry has given voice to the values and aspirations of placemaking, how communities can define themselves, empower themselves, and express themselves through their art, through their economies, and through the nature of the relationships between the political factions that make a community work. Lucy Lepard, who first achieved fame as an art critic for the Village Voice, has in more recent years become a great apostle for the concept of place and the lure of the local, and particularly as it applies to the making of art and the public experiences of art. More recently, James Kunstler, with his provocative musings on the catastrophe of suburbia, his famous book on the geography of nowhere, and his call to action as we reform our consumerist, automobile-based culture and economy, have given a new life and renewed vigor to the placemaking movement. The 60s and early 70s also gave birth to the environmental movement, from Lady Bird Johnson's beautification program to the famous writings of Rachel Carson with her Silent Spring. Americans began to take a hard look at environment, and the environmental movement was really, in a sense, spawned and is aligned with the placemaking movement of today. Evidence of the rising vitality of the sense of place movement is the proliferation of magazines and news outlets where issues pertinent to placemaking are discussed, particularly related to urban revitalization. While it is important to note, strictly speaking, that placemaking is not only about cities or planning, there are a few things that placemakers uniformly subscribe to. One of them is that we believe in public transportation and walkable cities. Correspondingly, we love bicycles. We prefer walking to biking and biking to automobiles, and we love public transportation. We like walking cities, and we idealize the 19th century urban environments in which work, play, and residential life were all within compacted neighborhoods. We generally disdain plop and drop megalomaniacal architecture that is out of context with its environment. These pictures from James Kunstler's famous Eyesore of the Month column. We like things that are locally made and are concerned about the sustainability of global supply chains. We believe in infusing public spaces with local art and place-based art, including these control boxes and street furniture. We believe that local festivals can rekindle a sense of place and civic attachment while attracting outsiders and putting our best foot forward. We support the mural art movement and believe that the story of a place can be rendered as easily in pictures as in words. Civic projects that capitalize on a region's cultural and natural resources enhance sense of place. The Rails to Trails movement, in this case along the canal between Massachusetts and Connecticut, is strengthening a sense of environmental stewardship and awareness of history. If there are rivers to recapture and natural resources to enjoy, we're for it. Placemaking is about telling your story and using outdoor signage to provide details and imagery that will inspire and engage. We disdain architecture that is cold and forbidding. We like welcoming, people-oriented, pedestrian-scale spaces. Projects for Public Spaces, founded by William White and Fred Kent, is the leading consulting firm with a process for creating better places, better public spheres in municipalities across the country and internationally. The Project for Public Spaces 11 Principles of Placemaking makes some fundamental assumptions about how to evolve spaces into community places. It takes note of the fact that the community is the expert at civic engagement. You are creating a space, not a design. You can't do it alone. They will always say it can't be done. You have to develop a vision. Money is usually not the issue, and frankly, the project isn't finished ever because the maintenance and ongoing development and care of public spaces is a process, not a project all by itself. PPS observes that great places are defined by sociability, accessibility, the variety of uses, and the fact that they are comforting and welcoming. What do some of these things mean in terms of activities and uses? The places have to be vital, fun, challenging, celebratory. In terms of comfort and image, it helps if it's historic, safe, clean, that there's sun and shade and places that you can actually sit. Common sense in a way, but things that sometimes are lacking in public spaces. Among the projects PPS has been involved with is the revitalization of Chapel Street in downtown New Haven, with before and after pictures shown here. Here are some before and after pictures of a streetscape design improvement project in New York City, a little more pedestrian friendly in the lower picture. A PPS project at the Old State House in Boston improved access and pedestrian amenities and diminished the sense of being surrounded by asphalt. One of their most famous projects involved the reclamation of Bryant Park near the New York Public Library, an area that was regarded as intimidating and scary and is now almost regarded as Manhattan's living room, one of the most popular public spaces in America. Great places, we know them when we see them. The Arlington District and Poughkeepsie on the upper left, and Cape May, New Jersey. These are pedestrian-scaled buildings with distinctive commercial amenities and a sense of history and a sense of place. Preservationists like to talk about places that have good bones, the architectural infrastructure and built environment that is conducive to a strong and vital and attractive sense of place. On the left is Schoharie, New York, upper right, Middlebury, Vermont, in the lower right, Stafford Springs, Connecticut, a small community that is rebounding. Other places with distinctive built environments are South Norwalk, known as Sono, Connecticut, and on the lower right, Norwich, New York. It's not an accident that many of the great places that we cherish today look a lot like the walking cities of the 19th century, the height of urbanism, shown in these postcards. We all believe that place matters, and that as these issues are discussed and refined, that we will find transformational ways to better communities, both small and large, rural and urban. Great places and placemaking values become central to the mission of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, whose This Place Matters campaign has rekindled interest in placemaking in the built environment. It's not that complicated. Just try to imagine the places you care about if key districts or landmarks were lost. Gen Xers and the rising generation are increasingly making choices based on the quality and character of place and the social experience that can be had. Another contemporary movement is the community-supported agriculture, which really started in the 70s but has taken off with a vengeance with farmers markets and other food-to-table-like programs. The farm-to-table movement, almost unheard of a decade ago, is now practiced in more than 100 communities nationwide and has sparked interest in local foods and supported local farms. It started in Italy with Carlo Petrini's slow food movement. Again, a kind of a reaction to the fast food culture that we live in, and one that is suggesting that people slow down and rethink their food choices. Richard Florida's notion of the creative class has taken off with a vengeance and has become a paradigm that urban analysts and community economic development experts are looking at closely. Some of it is a little arguable, but it's helped. It's helped by giving art and urban amenities an economic basis, an argument for how those things contribute, how the cultural life of a community contributes to its economy. This, in turn, has inspired the National Endowments for the Arts to develop some national granting programs that subsidize this kind of work and development, and it is all kind of taking off. There have been a number of compelling case studies, like the Philadelphia Mural Arts program shown here, that has transformed lives and neighborhoods. The famous Water Fire art project by Barnaby Evans in Providence, Rhode Island, described as the most important artwork ever produced for the city. It is an independent nonprofit arts organization whose mission is to inspire Providence and its visitors by revitalizing the urban experience, fostering community engagement, and creatively transforming the city by presenting water fire for all to enjoy. It's been a huge success and is one of the really iconic features of that capital city. One of the most interesting new leaders in the placemaking movement is the Orton Family Foundation in Vermont, to help people in small cities and towns navigate change in a way that honors their connection to community is their mission. They do this by offering programs and tools that engage diverse groups of residents in collaborative decision-making driven by what they love most about their town, discovering its heart and soul. The foundation was founded in 1995 as a resource for small cities and towns grappling with change and searching for solutions. Storytelling in the search for a civic narrative is a critical ingredient of placemaking. The Orton Foundation launched The Art of Action, a project to engage Vermont artists in grappling with issues that matter to the communities and to their region, a kind of place-making approach to art. Artist Philip Godenschwager's Great Wall uh, illustrates Vermont's symbolic resistance to big box stores and national chains. Artist Susan Abbott captures slice of life images of Vermont farming, agriculture, and seasonality. There are many expressions of place-based art in other parts of the country. This is the famous Frog Bridge in Willimantic, Connecticut, with the symbol of the frog and the spool from the former thread industry there. These were using evocative local symbols as part of the iconography of a public works project involving a new bridge construction. Living artists like Mary White in Charleston, South Carolina, found tremendous success by exploring aspects of culture, heritage, place, and tradition in the rural South. Musicians like Erica Wheeler evoke place in their music and work with communities to explore their local stories and narratives through music, while the theater companies also pick up on local stories and sometimes put those to theatrical performance, all efforts to use art as a placemaking tool. A case study of arts in service to revitalization is the Rockingham Arts and Museum project in Bellows Falls, Vermont, where local impresario Robert McBride has, as he put it, used dinner parties as a way of getting local development work and advancement work to happen. It's worked, and Bellows Falls is turning a corner. Bellows Falls is another one of these places that has good bones. The before and after pictures shown here from 1900 to the present don't show a lot of physical change, and yet the town had, I suppose, morale issues. Industry had left, change was underway, and it was hard, but I think the transition is now happening. Architect Dan Scully built this fascinating visitor center that invokes the old steel arch bridge that used to cross the Connecticut River into Walpole, New Hampshire, and the Exner block shown on the right, a tin-clad, decorated, fabulous building, but that was empty for many years, is now a home to artist housing and a number of small retail shops. So these are important changes that are the leading edge of the revitalization. Mural arts have taken off in Bellows Falls, and even the abandoned factory shown in the upper picture has suggestive artwork in the boarded up windows that at least creates a sense of joyfulness. Bellows Falls has really amazing architecture, and the message that is being provided in See Bellows Falls and the sign painted on the barn is a positive, upbeat message that is making a difference. Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, another happening place that is the hub of a regional economy and culture, which has extraordinary retail, restaurants, small businesses. It's become a real beehive of activity. The signature amenity in Shelburne Falls is the famous Bridge of Flowers. The trolley used to run through town, and when transportation changed, the bridge was abandoned. Some years ago, a group of local people decided to turn this into a community garden, and it's been prolifically successful. People come from all over the Northeast and further, really, to see the Bridge of Flowers. Portland, Oregon may not have the most flourishing economy in the United States, though it's doing well enough, but boy does it have style. And you can really sense almost literally as you're flying in that there's something different about this place. Look at the development, how the development stops at the river and farmland. It's just over the border across from the main centralized city. The food carts, the emphasis on made in Oregon, and the fact that the children all take public transportation to school. These are unusual features that give Portland, Oregon an edge up. Environmentally friendly, Portland is famous for its public transportation, its public spaces, and eco-friendliness. Check out the windmills on the top of a high-rise building there. Burlington, Vermont sticks out in a crowd. Check out the mural art, the novel colors in the dense development areas. the emphasis on Vermont state crafts, and the community bulletin boards that speak a high level of community involvement. The Church Street Marketplace in Burlington, Vermont stands out. It's got a superb commercial district, a pedestrian mall cut off from automobile traffic most of the time, with some key landmarks. It's part of the flavor and personality of this great small New England city. The public-private partnership that gave birth to the Highline Park in New York City in 2002 has been a remarkable transformational development. The Highline was a repurposed New York Central Railroad spur threatened with demolition and then saved and transformed into a one-of-a-kind park as unusual and unexpected as the Highline itself. The Highline has become the Lower West Side's living room and a major tourist attraction. It's an experience infused with art, and the art often changes. I love this little observation deck where you get a little window on the traffic below. Building things often is not enough. It helps to have good programming, and they have a busy schedule of activities, concerts, performances, all kinds of social activities that make the Highline the success it is. And as if that wasn't enough, one of New York's major art museums is building a satellite facility adjacent to the Highline. This neighborhood has become hot, 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 and it all started with the concept for a design of a park and the rehabilitation of a historic resource. Would you like to keep up and tune in? The National Main Street Center, a program of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, has an active website and presence on Facebook and a constant flow of good ideas that will keep you thinking about how placemaking works. The Project for Public Spaces recently created the Placemaking Leadership Council, which you can follow and participate, join in on the conversation on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. My favorite of the Placemaking Leadership Council's discussion threads on LinkedIn. You can scroll down through them and find dozens of really interesting topics and weigh in. This is how you make an impression, how you share your thoughts, and how you may learn some things. The Project for Public Spaces also has a compelling Facebook presence with wonderful visually oriented discussion threads that you can participate in. Ultimately, the challenge of placemaking is one of interpretation and imagination. I love this sign from the National Park at Yosemite, where they talk about the period in the 1930s when they discovered the idea that people appreciate nature better when they understand it. They developed this nature guide program, and these guides stand ready to help you understand and appreciate your heritage. Isn't that what placemaking is all about? Is engaging people and their imaginations with the qualities and character of the places that matter? As a museum curator, exhibition developer, and historian, I was always interested in using the museological processes, using art and artifacts to tell the story of a place. One of my first big projects was a 350th anniversary exhibition on the Connecticut River Valley at Wadsworth Atheneum in Hartford, Connecticut. We rounded up 500 objects, did survey work and analysis, and up and down the valley examined thousands of objects and archival documents to get inside the mind and consciousness of the place we were during the 18th, 17th, and early 19th centuries. Sam and Elizabeth, Legend and Legacy of Colt's Empire, picked up on Hartford's most iconic story, presenting an extraordinary treasure trove of family artifacts and archives built by the famous arms manufacturer Sam Colt. This exhibition created the climate of opinion that has led now to a $100 million redevelopment project of the old Colt industrial complex in the south end of Hartford. One of my favorite case studies of museum practice and service to placemaking values is the Coming Home, Building Community in a Changing World installation at the Mattituck Museum in Waterbury, Connecticut, which I've described as a machine for manufacturing citizenship. It's a remarkable experience. The museum at Mount Holyoke College took its most famous painting, a view of Hetch Hetchy Canyon in Yosemite Park by Albert Bierstadt, and did a compare and contrast to two dam and environmental projects and their impact. The formation of Yosemite and the damming up of the Hetch Hetchy Canyon, and the Quabbin Reservoir in Massachusetts, in which 3 towns were taken by eminent domain in the 1920s to supply water to Boston. Early Spring, Henry Thoreau and Climate Change at the Concord Museum in Massachusetts is a fascinating example of, again, an environmental issue, an issue affecting the community being tackled by a museum in a conscientious and thoughtful way. Of course, every place has a history, but surprisingly, most places also have an art history. The Museum of Wisconsin Art in West Bend, Wisconsin is actually doing something about it. Inside, you will see historical and contemporary art by Wisconsin artists, many of whom grappled with the place, its environment, and its legends in their work. One of the most exciting developments in educational pedagogy is the place-based education movement, which basically argues that everything that is normally accomplished through education be accomplished using local resources that at the same time instills a sense of civic attachment. What is civic attachment? It's basically the assumption that curiosity leads to knowledge, leads to understanding, a sense of civic responsibility, caring, and then action. It's the quality that makes us better citizens and makes us concerned about the places that we inhabit. Harvard professor Robert Putnam, who was the recipient of the National Humanities Medal in 2013 for deepening our understanding of community in America, became famous when his book Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of the American Community became a runaway bestseller and an influence on public policy throughout the country. Again, the issue that he addresses is the consequences of civic detachment and how to foster civic engagement and the kind of involvement that is also fundamental to the betterment of community. The Kentucky writer Wendell Berry is also the recipient of the National Humanities Medal. Berry's nonfiction serves as an extended conversation about the way of life he values, which includes sustainable agriculture, connection to place, the pleasures of good food, good work, local economies, reverence, and the interconnectedness of life. Berry's unshakable devotion to the land, to localism, and to the dignity of traditional life makes him a prophet in his native land. The concept of solving for pattern, coined by Berry, is the process of finding solutions that solve multiple problems while minimizing the creation of new problems. It has come to enjoy wide use throughout the design community. Berry's relevance to placemaking is best understood simply by reading his words. If the word community is to mean or amount to anything, it must refer to a place. We've seen the emergence into power in this country of an economic elite who have invested their lives and loyalties in no locality and in no nation, whose ambitions are global and who are so insulated by wealth and power that they feel no need to care about what happens to any place. The experience of growing up in a community in which virtually everybody was passionately interested in the quality of a local product was, I now see, a rare privilege. Some of these lines should be engraved in stone. The new must come from the old, for where else would you get it? Not, anyway, from contempt for the old. We can't preserve historic buildings to any purpose for very long outside the contexts of community life and local economy. A viable community is made up of neighbors who cherish and protect what they have in common. It is by the place we've got and our love for it and our keeping of it that this world is joined to heaven. This is the best, some of the best of Wendell Berry. Okay, here we are, time to wrap it up. Placemaking isn't just a process, and it isn't just about design or preservation. It is, most of all, a point of view and attitude. One of the things I love about preservation and placemaking is that the people drawn to it generally really care about 3 key things: inspiring, well-built buildings, history, and a place they have embraced to find meaning, purpose, and sustenance. Isn't that the key to civic advancement and economic development? People don't generally follow their nest they plan to live in and live for. This is why, in my view, all mayors and politicians should be placemakers and preservationists, because it truly is, as Berry puts it, by the place we've got and our love for it and our keeping of it, that our world and work is joined to something bigger than ourselves, which is always what placemaking and economic betterment require. I, for one, am tired of all this globaloney. As this wonderful article from Georgia suggests, think local, act local, and the whole global thing will work itself out. Who can doubt it? Our 1,001 cherished places won't save or better themselves by accident. It takes conviction, vigilance, and imagination, which is the point of this course. So we go forth and by all means occupy somewhere. Make a place that you care about better through the work that you do.